So it's always fun. Like I said before we started, I was researching you, and you're a Moravian grad, and that's always fun. People are probably tired of me talking about Moravian College, but I don't care. It's fun to find that.
Absolutely. No, I love Moravian. I love Bethlehem generally, but absolutely. I'm a Moravian grad. I was a chemistry major at Moravian. And
I knew a lot of those. I never went into a chem lab. I've been inside of one, but not for a class. But I had so many friends who were on the science track. Yeah. So how do you go from being in a chem lab to becoming a lawyer? What was that? Give us a little bit of your story. I know you went to Deer High School, grew up in Allentown. You're currently in Emmaus. But what was, before we start talking about what you're going to be doing, what was that path? How did you get from Deer to where you are now?
Okay, so I'm the product of immigrants. My parents, I'm a first generation American. Both my parents were born in Syria and came to the United States at a young age and had me, Eman, and then I was the oldest. And then my sister Diane and my brother Chad, you can see that the names became more Americanized, and raised us with some really good values to work hard, do well, treat people the way you want to be treated, read. We were really taught to read a lot, and went through the public school system, graduated from Deer, and then wound up at Moravian, where chemistry was just always so interesting to me, and it had a really great program, great professors, and really one-on-one. I shouldn't say one-on-one, but the classes were small enough that you really got a great experience. I actually am a bit of a nerd. I graduated at the top of my class in chemistry and didn't even think about law school until I was speaking to my physics professor, who encouraged me to apply. And I thought, why not? So it was.
So at the end of your senior year?
Between junior and senior year.
Wow. So you were like, and that's really interesting to me because I know those types of people who are at the tops of their, I was somewhere in the middle, at the tops of their class. That's, that's all encompassing to how do you kind of make that shift? What was your thought process? I'm going to go into law now, or what was it a little bit different?
So I also, I don't have a minor in English, but I also love to read and love English. I took a lot of English courses, Brit Lit, American Lit, in college as well. So the science part was, my day-to-day, I spent so many weekends in labs. But when my professor suggested that I consider sort of merging the two, writing and reading and research doesn't necessarily have to be in a laboratory. And I researched it, I looked into it, and I thought, why not? Let's give this a chance. So I actually applied to law schools, but I also applied to grad schools. And then I made the decision, let's do something different. Let's go to law school and see what that's all about.
And what was it all about? Is it just like when I think about going to law school, it's like I'm going to be a lawyer, but there's so many different facets of what you can do. When you were exposed to law school, then did you narrow it down more from there?
Yes. So there are so many different practitioners. General practitioners are sort of a dying breed. So there's very few lawyers that are the jack of all trades and master of none. Really, for the most part, you hone in on a focus. So I went to the University of Dayton School of Law, and I wanted to focus on intellectual property because that would be a really good meeting of the minds with my chemistry degree and the law. And then I just pivoted, and I kept taking different turns. And right now I'm working as a deputy county solicitor, so I'm not doing intellectual property, but I spent about 5 years of my career doing IP work. So law school is very different from undergrad, and very different from being a science major and a chemist. It's a little bit of a shifting in mindset.
It's yeah, like it's so different, but it, like the way you're describing it, it's not. You're using those skills, that you honed during your time in labs, and it's not so much of the end result of that lab as much as learning the process of how you get to the result. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. I actually think being a chemist, and people might laugh and say this is ridiculous, but I think that being a chemist helped ease the pain of law school because, I was used to studying really hard and coming up with a methodology and just applying it. And that is essentially, there's a lot of other components, obviously, to being a
Sure.
lawyer, but that tremendously.
And so you went into private practice for a little bit of time, is that correct?
Yeah, so I wound up with a local firm for about 5 years, where my focus was, obviously when you're an associate, you don't get to choose you take whatever work the partners give you. But
Right.
I was the resident IP expert. And I say that really joking. I learned a lot, and I really learned to think on my feet, to be independent. But I would advise clients on intellectual property matters, such as getting trademarks, securing copyrights, entering into licensing agreements, manufacturing agreements, distribution agreements, everything that you could think of related to, business and intellectual property, just sort of merging those two together. And that was really, it was exciting. It's neat. You get to work with artists and people that have really creative sides and help them reduce that to something that's protected and that they can make a living off of.
And you go from that exciting world of IP to deciding that you want to work for the county. I'm just saying, I'm laughing because it doesn't seem as exciting. We're going to talk about it, and it's very important. But that, was that a tough decision? Because it kind of seems like you're having some fun with it. And then to do what you were doing for the county that's work,
It was a big pivot for sure. Being in private practice has a lot of positives. You are exposed to a lot of different exciting aspects of the law, and people. It's not necessarily what you picture on TV, but it's not that far off. And I had a call. I felt like I needed to change gears a little bit, and I wanted to do more boots to the ground work. And I'd been volunteering at some nonprofits, and I had advised some nonprofits as well when I was in private practice. And I just thought, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to do more, as I say, boots to the ground work, having more of an impact on the day-to-day and the citizens. The Lehigh Valley means a lot to me. I'm born and raised here. I'm raising my family here, and it's very important to me that this community grows and prospers. And I wanted to be, a meaningful part of that. And I thought this was a way that I could achieve that goal.
And forgive me for not knowing the hierarchy, but we're going to get into it. As a deputy county solicitor, where does that fit? I know that you have the DA, and then is it within the office? There's lawyers assigned to various different things.
So the DA's office is the criminal division of government, and then there's the solicitor's office, which handles more of the day-to-day of county government. So my office, I'm a full-time deputy county solicitor, but we have some part-time. But my office represents all of the agencies that provide services to the constituents of Lehigh County. So we the Board of Commissioners, the county executive, all the human service agencies. That's really my focus, one of my focuses, I should say. Farmland preservation. So we advise and counsel these agencies that provide services to older adults, people that have mental health issue diagnoses, or intellectual disabilities. Farmland preservation is another big one that's kind of important.
Yeah, can we talk about that? How is your role as a deputy solicitor? How does that affect farmland preservation, or what is your role within farmland preservation on behalf of the county?
So I represent, I work with, and I've been with them for almost 15 years. It's crazy to think about that, with the Farmland Preservation Board, and I assist them with the process of obtaining easements. So they want to preserve our farmland and our open space, and I assist them with contract review, all these random legal issues that come up with preserving our farms and purchasing. The county will purchase easements to preserve farmland.
Is that where it's funny, I was up droning before it all snowed, but some of that farm area up in Northampton County and in Lehigh County is just breathtaking. It's amazing how beautiful it is. Is the issue where someone, like a private company, would go to when a farmer is about to sell and they'll buy it? So then I'm just trying to explain the role of what, is that what is happening? And then the county's saying, and this Farmland Preservation Board, we would prefer you not to buy this land. We'd rather keep it for
Mhm.
you know,
So
preserve
it's
it just in
ultimately
general or do for other things?
it's ultimately up to the farmer. So there's a place for everything. I mean, I look at it from the viewpoint there's absolutely a place for business growth, but there's also a place for farmland growth. So when a farmer decides that they want to preserve their land, what they're
Hmm.
essentially doing, they're saying this land is important enough to me that I don't want it to be developed. I want the future of this land to be farmland. And they enter into an agreement with the county, and that's what I help facilitate for
Okay.
the for a promise essentially. And it's more than a promise, but that's, as basic as I can explain it, to say that we're not going to develop this land, we're going to continue to farm it. And there's some gorgeous farms out there.
So it's more of a preemptive thing in a way. I mean, I'm sure some of these could come up a little bit more heated, but so it's something where I could say, hey, I know that the future of my generation, I don't want this land to be anything other than what it's been.
Right. So a farmer would say, I don't want my children, or I don't want potential buyers down the road to convert this farmland into whatever. I want to keep it in keep it green and keep it cropland or dairy farm or whatever. We have a ton of different types of farms, and then they apply. It's not an automatic thing. You have to apply, and there's all sorts of regulations and measures to see if your farm qualifies to be preserved. We have about 60. I want to say the last I checked, about 60 farms on the waiting list to be preserved. So it's not an automatic, and
Wow.
it's a timely process. It takes about a year to 18 months to get a farm approved. From approval to actually settling, it
Hmm.
takes a bit of time.
And now as you're moving, I mean, we're not going to talk too much politics, and we're not. Like, I'm curious about why, you want to make the run for judge. What is it about running for judge that is so appealing to you, just as a person? And why is that something that you're aspiring to do?
So a couple different reasons. So I love what I do. I say I have a great job. I get to work with really good people, and I'm so grateful to all the county employees that help make our county such a wonderful place. But I just had a moment where, the light bulb sort of went off, and I thought, well, what can I do next? What can I do next to sort of grow and move forward in my legal career, and also be impactful within the county? And my husband actually said to me, I think you should consider running for judge. And I have a 2-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. I had my kids a little bit later in life. I'm a lot older than I look, but I thought to myself, I want to set an example to my daughter and to all the other little girls out there that it doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, what your name sounds like, you can do it. And that really was a big driver for me. I want to make sure that my children and everybody's children recognize and understand their own worth and know that they can do this, that they are capable. And you have to, it's definitely something uncomfortable. You are absolutely going outside of the box, but you have to just push
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, it's such an interesting position, and I don't want to get too weird about it, but it just a weird being a judge, because it's one of those things we've been hearing about it in elections over and over again. It's kind of like the buck stops here type of thing. Of course, there's appeals and all of that, but to be in that position is just interesting. What does the Court of Common Pleas, a judge of the Court of Common Pleas, what is like a day to day? And you're clearly not one yet, but I'm sure you're aware. What is a day to day type thing for them? What types of cases are coming in for the Court of Common Pleas? This is probably something I should know. So if you could re-educate me.
So in Lehigh County, there's 9 judges on a normal basis. So there's 9 Court of Common Pleas judges is what we call them. And they're divvied up into a criminal division and then a civil division. And then underneath civil, there's a family and orphans court. So
Okay.
what you would normally see on TV, like the Law and Order type shows
Mm-hmm.
that you see, really deal mostly with the criminal division. And we have judges that handle criminal cases on a day-to-day basis. The civil side is also maybe some stuff that you see on TV, medical malpractice type cases,
Mm-hmm.
automobile accidents, that sort of thing. And then my focus, which is what I've been primarily focused on, is sort of the orphans court branch of things, which deals with and hopefully you and nobody you know ever have to deal with any of these areas, but helping these agencies prevent and limit and stop abuse, neglect, and exploitation of our vulnerable citizens. That's part of what I do. It's tough work. It's emotional work. Some days I come home and I think, wow.
Yeah.
It feels good to be part of a process that is moving forward in a positive direction, and that is really helping people.
And I know we're having fun, but it is something to think about. There are people who need advocates, and we have the privilege. I have the privilege of talking to you, and we're putting on a fun podcast. But there are those in our community, our neighbors who rely on the advocates in our community. So it is tough, and it's something that I going on this and taking under this role and wanting to even pursue being a judge says a lot about a person, and I wish you luck in that.
Thank you.
I want to talk about you live in Emmaus now. What's some of your favorite things about living in Emmaus? I always joke, my friend Chris Elston lives there. I'm not sure, I say it like you should know him, but he has a photography business in Emmaus, and we always joke about meeting at like the Triangle there.
You should need to do that.
And so what is it about Emmaus that you love so much that you and your family have settled down there?
So the walkability factor for me is huge. I love the fact that we can walk where we need to get to. And there's so many cool small businesses and shops. There's the farmers market. We go to the farmers market when the weather permits. We can actually pop the kids in the stroller and just go down to the Triangle and get produce and meat and a donut. And it's really nice to be able to sort of connect with your community that way. And it's big enough that there's some really cool places that you can hit, and it's small enough that your neighbors, and you can get where you want to get easily.
I'm sure it still is. I just remember I think it was either mid 2000s or like 2010, and Emmaus kept popping up on like the best small town to live in America for a couple of years, and I think they were getting all snooty about it, in a good way. I'm kidding. It's one of the nicer towns, and it's one that I think flies under the radar sometimes, just because they're not trying to make a big thing. It's just, hey, we have all these things, and we encourage you to come out. I know their ice festival is always a big hit. I guess they probably couldn't have it this year, or the ice ball.
It is a really, really neat town, and
Yeah.
there's all sorts of activities that go on. And I so when I say walkability, I went to Moravian, obviously, and
Right.
what it's like. Downtown Bethlehem is a favorite spot of mine. My husband actually is a transplant. He's not from Pennsylvania. He's not from this area, and he lived in Rhode Island for a bit, and that was a really walkable town, Providence. And when we first started dating, I took him to Bethlehem, and he was amazed at the restaurants, the fact that there's tables outside and people are eating and talking and walking, and just the arts and the culture. And I think Emmaus is, maybe not quite the same as Bethlehem, but for me, it was.
I don't think they want. Yeah, I don't think Emmaus wants to be. Like, Emmaus is what? It's that small town charm. Instead of maybe like the big restaurants, you have the cafe type. That's the thing I think about. It's Americana.
But it's a lot of really cool mom and pop shops, really good coffee places to hit. There's a couple really, really good coffee places that I can't not go in every time we walk by. And there's a drive-through Yakko's down there too. I'm pretty sure. There is. Just on the way to Blackman Cycle down there. Yeah. We love hot dogs in our family, so we're very familiar with the Yakko's and with the Pots. There's also a Pots. I don't know if actually.
Yeah, I have to ask, because I have a 4-year-old, and I'm not speaking for my wife, but I'm pretty sure we are done. We're gonna have one. Have you ever employed any of your legal tactics on your children, like when they're fighting? Because that would be like the first thing. If I could use this power on them,
they are
to help
smart.
them figure it out.
I can tell you. I'm sure with your 4-year-old, it is amazing to me, and you can probably hear them.
I can hear them now. Yeah,
they're of course they knew. It's like they have this sixth sense. They know when when I mention their names and when they need to be on their best behavior. They're sometimes on their best behavior, but not always. Well, they're 2 years apart, not even. They're 18 months apart, I should say. So they're close enough in age that they love one another and they play with one another, but they fight constantly.
Sure.
And I do my best, but
yeah. I mean, considering during the times now where we've all had to spend a little bit more time together than we would have, the fact that they're getting along is good. It's funny, you talk about kids being so smart. We have Alexas all in the house. I don't care. And you can announce to other rooms, I can say something in up here and I can announce it. And once our 4-year-old figured out how to make that happen, she now makes Alexa announcements like constantly. And I want her to enjoy it, but I'm like, hey, when we're talking on the podcast, can you just keep down, you don't have to tell mom you just went to the bathroom every time, even though it's helpful, and thank you.
Has she figured out how to drop into a room? Because my son loves doing that. We have two, and he does that all the time, and it's
well, they have my niece, so her cousin lives in Portland, Oregon. She's 6, my daughter's 4. But they do the Facebook Messenger. And what's good about that is we control all of it. And they can only message each other. But that's been fascinating because like she'll put the phone up and they'll kind of play together and they'll show each other what they're doing. And it's totally normal to her because she's never seen anything different. So it's sad in a way. Like I'd rather her be around kids and having fun. But I'm like, you're still communicating and we can work with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My kids love, I would be dishonest if I say, oh, they're not on they don't like iPads. They do. I mean, but I'm also trying to push on them. And I'm sure you do this, you and your wife do this with your daughter too. For me, it's a love of reading. I'm trying to get them active, and I feel bad for them because they're cooped up at home all day and I want them, to have activities, and we try to get out a little bit.
Yeah, I don't pretend we're the best parents in the world, but my wife reads, it's at least 3 books every night. It's their routine. Huh? They don't go to bed without reading books, to the fact that my daughter's like picking out books ahead of time. And that being said, they downloaded this new video game that's really aesthetically fun, and they've been playing that together, and so it's, I don't know, like I kind of take the good with the bad, and as long as you're doing the right, if your intentions are good, I think generally you're doing well. I guess it's good to know you're not trying to manipulate your kids with the lawyer speak.
No, not at all. You know what? It's funny because they pick up on things very easily. So my son will repeat, and I think to myself, how the heck did
he hear that?
He hear that word from? And sometimes they're legal words, and sometimes they're other words, and but it's wild to me how they're sponges, and they amaze me on a daily basis. And for me, being a working mom, working full time, I'm like, they're so important to me. And I want to make sure that I'm raising, these 2 amazing creatures that are going to be wonderful contributors to society. And I think sometimes it's hard, you're balancing all of that. And
you just overwhelmed me with that thought. It's so scary. I get it now. Like I used to make fun of parents. Like I used, they'll be like, you don't know until you have a kid. I won't say that to anybody, but I feel bad if I ever came back and like I knew it, because it's a scary proposition to be like, we're responsible for her, not just her safety, but what goes into her head, and
Exactly. But it's so cool in the same respect as tough because my husband and I talk about this all the time. It's an immense responsibility, but it's so cool. Like at this person and you see how interesting and smart and just different they are, how different they are from one another, and how different they are from us and similar to us. And it's awe-inspiring.
It changed my entire outlook. If you knew me prior to this, having a daughter just totally, I woke up one day and was like, what have I been doing? You have this gift, and you got to figure it out. So it's been a wild ride, especially the last year, I'm sure for you too. Speaking of that, as we go into this, election day is May 18th, too long. How is this for you? We had mentioned you're like, hey, I'm not the most spotlight person, and that's fine. I don't think a judge has to be. But how is the election going to be for you, especially during COVID too? You can't knock on doors as much as maybe you would have, last year or the year before that. How has this process been for you?
It's definitely been challenging. So I'm new to this. So I definitely am not a spotlight person. I'm a worker bee. I'm the person that's, researching and reading and drafting and trying to figure out solutions. But this is very eye-opening. And I've entered a race when, as you say, we're in coronavirus season, pandemic, we can't do what we normally would do. So I'm obviously social distancing, trying to do as many things as we can by Zoom, by phone. And, you're going to be meeting people, but I always want to be respectful and keep your mask on and stay 6 feet apart, but still try to engage and talk to people, because I think that that's what the citizens of this county want. They want to be comfortable with who they're electing. They want to know who they're electing. So we're having to be really creative, George, and coming up with ways to introduce me to the community and get them comfortable and on board.
I have a question. I don't know if you know the answer. I just thought of this. Is Lehigh County, are their court systems doing any virtual type stuff, or
Absolutely.
Then it was different than prior COVID?
Absolutely. So pre-COVID, I go to court very regularly, and there's a process, and it used to be, depending on who the judge was, there's something that's called the call of the list. So you go and there's a bunch of other attorneys and you wait your turn. And other instances, it's a dedicated time slot. But either way, you're down there, you're physically in the courtroom engaging with people. Well, of course, Now with the pandemic and this wonderful IT world that we have available to us, we have been able at Lehigh County to have a lot of hearings and other conferences and status calls occur over Zoom, and it's unbelievable to me. So it's really cool. There's pros and cons. There's something to be said for physically being there and engaging.
I just think it's interesting because I think without COVID, this was inevitable anyway, like the rise of video networking, but I think because of COVID, it made, somebody said this, I didn't. It's like it made change that would have taken 5 years in 1 year. We all had to get. It wasn't like we had to get good at it. Because of it's good for you. You had to do it for self-preservation. Like you needed to know how to get on a meeting and all that. And it's interesting when you have to do it. I'm curious what happens after this.
Absolutely. And I wonder about that too, because I present sometimes at our local bar association, and I do trainings at work for our caseworkers and our social workers. And that was all, again, pre-COVID. You do it in person, you get to engage with the audience. And we've had to hit the ground running and set things up by Zoom. And it's interesting. There's always a little bit of a bumpy way, but I'm so surprised and pleased it's worked out really well.
If you're the judge, you have to make sure you don't mute yourself. That would be embarrassing. Did you see the lawyer cat?
No, I didn't.
You didn't see the lawyer cat? Oh my God! Hold on. Let me see if I can bring this up here. I don't believe you. There was this. If I hopefully I can do it and share this with you. Please. Hold on.
I hope so too.
Wait, I'm waiting for this came on. It was one of those things that genuinely was so hilarious. I shared it with everybody. Like you don't usually find them. Hold on. Okay, let's see.
I don't know that I've seen it. And I'm surprised. Like, usually, whenever there's anything that has to do with a lawyer, he usually says, "Here, look at this." But
hold on. Can you hear that? Can you hear that?
I can see it. No, but I'm going to send this
link to you.
Absolutely.
Hold on. Let me see. Don't worry. If this gets weird, I can always edit it out. Man, you're going to have to. I'm going to send you this link when we're done.
Okay.
So I'm going to set the scene for you since you can't hear it. So they were in you can see it here. It's a Texas court.
Oh my God.
Did you see this? And so, yeah, they're up here, and this guy's one of the lawyers, and the judge is like, "Hey, you seem to have a filter on," and he's the filter. So as you're watching it,
he couldn't get rid of the filter.
He couldn't get it. I'll send you the link.
I think I saw this on the Daily Show. That's where when you said the and You know what? And now that you say this, I didn't realize that that was a lawyer.
Yeah, that's why it was so
unable
funny. If you listen to it, he says something to the effect of, "It's a filter, my assistant. We can't get it off. I'm not a cat. I'd like to proceed." So like he couldn't figure it out, but he's still like, I'm here. It's me. Let's go on with the court case. So hopefully you get some of those once in a while. If you do get elected, that'd be funny.
Well, I think that is, while not ideal for that poor lawyer,
Sure.
I'm sure that that made everybody's day, really, assuming that it was a straight matter.
It was, and if you saw on there, I did it really quickly. It said screen sharing of this is illegal, right? Like you can't do it. It turns out that the court itself uploaded it because they had a sense of humor with it. So nobody's breaking the law.
I'll have to be careful. My nephew, who frequently calls me, and I learned this recently, like there's when you're FaceTiming or Google Duoing someone, you can hit so he'll want me to like tap on the different faces. So I'll have to be very careful, George, that I don't do that the next time that I
think it's inevitable because now those filters are on everything now. So there's no way, at least they're generally, it's just like some cat hairs or something. So you should be fine. But Eman, thank you so much. This has been great. And I've learned more. This is my goal with every one of these now, is to learn more. Because I think that, again, we take things for granted that I don't want everyone, unless you're working in the field, to go see a judge. It's not good to see a judge often. You probably aren't around the best friends. You want to, but it's interesting to note of the things that are going on in our community that maybe sometimes we don't realize, especially the things that maybe are hard to talk about and deal with people who, like you mentioned with orphans, who can't really advocate much for themselves. So we wish you the best of luck. This has been so much fun. And for a fellow hound as well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Go Greyhounds.
Yes, I want to make sure all of the stuff is in the notes, the show notes, but it is jarrahforjudge.com.
It is. It's www.jarrahforjudge.com. That's where people get a little bit more about me. Absolutely.
Okay, and sit tight. Don't run off here yet, but we're going to end this. And thank you very much.
Thank you, George.